The galactic salvage yard, 459, stretched across an entire asteroid, a cosmic trash heap that would make any earthbound hoarder weep with joy. Countless derelict ships, broken-down equipment, and mysterious alien contraptions littered the rocky surface, all arranged in neat rows that somehow made the chaos look almost intentional. The artificial atmosphere dome cast everything in a slightly purplish tint, which only added to the surreal nature of the place. Zeke Morrison stood at the entrance, his worn boots planted firmly on the metal walkway, taking in the sight with the kind of grin that usually preceded either brilliance or disaster. His weathered jacket, adorned with patches from a dozen different space stations, marked him as a seasoned spacer. The duffel bag slung over his shoulder contained enough credits to either make him the proud owner of something amazing or the laughingstock of the entire Orion arm. "Welcome to Kizik's Premium Salvage," chirped an enthusiastic voice from somewhere around his knee level. Looking down, Zeke found himself face to antenna with what appeared to be a neon green, cricket-like alien wearing what could only be described as a business-casual exoskeleton. "The name's Zeke," he replied, trying not to stare at the creature's constantly twitching mandibles. "I heard you folks might have some military surplus." The alien, presumably Kizikut, made a sound like a garbage disposal trying to digest a fork. "Military surplus? Oh, human friend, we have nothing so crude. Only finest decommissioned civilian vessels and—" "That's an Arxian battle cruiser back there," Zeke interrupted, pointing toward a massive hulk half buried in smaller debris. Even covered in space dust and sporting what looked like several centuries' worth of rust, the distinctive predatory lines of the ship were unmistakable. Kizik's antennae drooped noticeably. "Ah, you have good eyes for one with such limited optical range, but surely a human wouldn't be interested in such outdated technology." Zeke was already walking toward the ship, his boots clanking on the metal walkway. The closer he got, the more his grin widened. What the alien saw as outdated, he saw as potential. The Arxians might have been defunct for 3 centuries, but they knew how to build ships that lasted. "How much?" he asked, running a hand along the scarred hull plating. "For this piece of historical artifact?" Kizik's mandibles clicked rapidly, the alien equivalent of nervous laughter. "You understand it hasn't moved in 50 cycles? The power core is probably—" "How much?" Zeke repeated, now tapping various points on the hull and listening intently. 50,000 credits, Kzik said with the air of someone naming an impossible sum to discourage further discussion. Zeke turned around, his grin now reaching levels that would make a shark envious. "I'll give you 5,000 for it." "5, but that's—" Kzik's entire body turned a fascinating shade of chartreuse. "This is not some Earth bazaar where we haggle like primitive—" "You've had it taking up prime real estate for 50 cycles, Zeke pointed out, "and I'm betting I'm the first person who's shown any interest in actually buying it, rather than scrapping it for parts." The alien's antennae twisted themselves into what appeared to be a knot. 20,000. 7,000, and I'll move it out today so you can use the space for something that might actually sell this century. Kizik made that garbage disposal sound again, but this time it had a distinct note of resignation. 10,000, not 1 credit less, and you must remove it today. Deal. Zeke stuck out his hand, remembered who he was dealing with, and quickly converted the gesture into a respectful antenna-ward wave. As he reached for his credit chip, he could have sworn he heard the old ship creaking in anticipation. Little did Kizik know that what they saw as worthless junk was about to become something the galaxy hadn't seen in a very long time. A perfect fusion of ancient Arxian engineering and good old-fashioned human ingenuity. And if Zeke's suspicions about certain components were correct, this rust bucket was going to make quite a few people very, very nervous. After transferring the initial payment, Zeke pulled out his diagnostics kit, a battered tablet that looked like it had been through several wars and probably had. He pressed his palm against the ship's access panel, and to Kizik's visible surprise, it hummed to life, casting a faint blue glow. "Impossible," the alien chittered. "The power systems have been dead for—" "Arxian quantum batteries," Zeke interrupted, his eyes scanning the readings. "They last practically forever. Just need a bit of biomechanical feedback to wake them up." He paused, squinting at a particularly interesting data stream. "Well, would you look at that?" What is wrong?" Kzik skittered nervously. "Wrong! Nothing's wrong. Just discovering that this beauty has a Mark 7 hyperdrive core, fully intact." Zeke whistled low. That alone is worth about 50,000 credits to the right buyer. Kazik's exoskeleton made a sound like cracking ice. Perhaps we should renegotiate. Contracts already signed and filed with the station authority, Zeke said cheerfully, moving deeper into the ship. His handheld scanner beeped excitedly as he passed through what appeared to be a standard cargo hold, but was reading as having military-grade shield generators hidden behind the panels. The ship was a treasure trove of hidden technology. Behind every rusty panel and beneath every layer of dust lay systems that would make modern military engineers weep with joy. The Arxians hadn't just built this ship to last, they'd built it to deceive. Every weapon system was disguised as something innocent. Every military-grade component masked by layers of civilian hardware. "Hey, Kazik," Zeke called out, his voice echoing from deep within the ship. "You sure this was just a regular cruiser? Because these readings suggest otherwise." "All documentation indicates civilian vessel," Kazik insisted, though their antennae were now twisted into what looked like a double helix of anxiety. "Previous owner very clear about this." "Previous owner," Zeke muttered, brushing dust off a panel to reveal a symbol he recognized from his military history studies, the mark of the Arxian Special Operations Division. "Right." The final system check confirmed what he'd suspected from the moment he'd seen the ship's silhouette. This wasn't just some forgotten relic. It was a ghost ship, one of the legendary stealth vessels that had helped the Arxians dominate 3 sectors before their mysterious disappearance. The fact that it was sitting in a junkyard was either the biggest oversight in galactic history or someone's idea of a very elaborate joke. As Zeke finalized the transfer of ownership, he couldn't help but notice how Kazik seemed increasingly eager to complete the transaction and usher him away. The alien probably thought they were getting rid of worthless junk. Instead, they'd just sold him one of the most sophisticated weapons platforms ever created, for the price of a used shuttle. Station Gamma 9's maintenance bay wasn't exactly the prestigious shipyard this vessel deserved, but it was private, and more importantly, it didn't ask questions. Zeke had managed to dock his new acquisition in the furthest corner of the facility, where the lighting was conveniently spotty and the security cameras had a peculiar habit of looking the other way. "Home sweet home," he muttered, setting up his portable workshop with practiced efficiency. Tools ranging from standard hydrospanners to highly illegal alien tech diagnostics equipment emerged from his seemingly bottomless toolbox. Each piece had a story, most of which would probably get him arrested in at least 3 sectors. The first week was devoted purely to cleaning. Centuries of cosmic dust had accumulated in every crevice, creating a uniquely disgusting paste when mixed with the ancient lubricants. Zeke found himself wearing a breather mask not just for safety, but to avoid tasting what 300 years of space grime smelled like. "If the Arxians were so advanced," he grumbled, scraping something particularly nasty off a power coupling, "you'd think they'd have invented self-cleaning ships." His words echoed through the empty corridors, accompanied by the steady drip of cleaning solution and the occasional spark from aging systems coming back to life. It was during the second week, while tracing what he thought was a routine power line, that Zeke made his first major discovery. The line didn't end at the auxiliary power grid as the schematics suggested. Instead, it disappeared into a hidden compartment behind the bridge's main console. "Well, well, well," he whispered, carefully removing the false panel. "What other secrets are you hiding? Beautiful." The compartment contained a sphere about the size of a human head, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Zeke recognized it immediately from black market tech discussions, an Arxian quantum AI core, the holy grail of artificial intelligence technology. "No wonder they hid you," he breathed, carefully disconnecting the sphere from its housing. Modern AI cores were impressive, but they were crude implements compared to this piece of engineering. The Arxians had somehow managed to encode consciousness itself into quantum states, creating AIs that were indistinguishable from organic intelligence. Setting up a proper power connection took 3 days of careful work. Zeke had to fabricate several adapter pieces just to make modern power cells compatible with the ancient technology. Each connection had to be perfect. One wrong move and he'd fry components that were literally irreplaceable. "Moment of truth," he announced to the empty ship on the 4th day. His finger hovered over the activation switch, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Please don't explode, please don't explode, please don't explode. He pressed the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a distant wind chime, the sphere began to glow. Patterns of light danced across its surface, accelerating until they were almost too fast to follow. The ship's main lights flickered, dimmed, and suddenly blazed to full brightness. "System initialization in progress," announced a voice that somehow managed to sound both ancient and crystal clear. "Quantum matrix realigning. Neural pathways regenerating. Primary consciousness emerging." Zeke held his breath as status reports flashed across his diagnostic screen. The AI was rebuilding itself, integrating 3 centuries of dormancy into its consciousness. This was the crucial moment. AIs that spent too long powered down sometimes came back wrong. "Integration complete," the voice announced, then with a distinctly different tone that managed to convey both curiosity and amusement. "Well, this is unexpected. I appear to have been asleep for quite some time, and you're certainly not an Arxian." "No," Zeke agreed, grinning. "Name's Zeke Morrison. I found you in a junkyard." There was a pause that felt distinctly judgmental. "A junkyard," the AI repeated flatly. "I, one of the most advanced combat vessels ever created, was in a junkyard. If it makes you feel any better, it was a really nice junkyard, very clean, professional." The AI made a sound that might have been a sigh. "I suppose I should be grateful, though I must admit, I'm curious about what a human plans to do with an Arxian stealth warship." Zeke's grin widened. "How do you feel about making the galaxy's biggest powers very, very nervous?" "Interesting," the AI replied, and Zeke could have sworn the sphere pulsed with a brighter light. "Tell me more about this plan of yours, Zeke Morrison. And perhaps while we talk, you can help me run a full systems diagnostic. I suspect I'm not operating at peak efficiency after my extended rest." "Buddy," Zeke said, already reaching for his tools, "this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship." Over the next few days, Zeke and the AI, who had introduced itself as Protocol 7, but you can call me Pro, systematically explored the ship's hidden capabilities. Each discovery made Zeke increasingly grateful that he'd grabbed this particular piece of junk before someone else realized what it was. "So let me get this straight," Zeke said, staring at the holographic display showing the ship's weapon systems. "Those aren't cargo bay doors at all, are they?" "Correct," Pro replied, sounding almost smug. "They're quantum torpedo launchers, disguised to look like standard cargo doors. The Arxians were quite proud of that particular bit of deception." Zeke whistled low. "And I'm guessing those atmospheric processors along the hull." "Phase cannons," Pro confirmed, "capable of punching through capital ship shields like they're tissue paper. Though I should note they'll need significant recalibration after 3 centuries of disuse." The more they dug into the ship's systems, the more Zeke realized he'd stumbled onto something far more significant than a simple stealth vessel. Hidden compartments revealed prototype weapons that weren't supposed to exist. Encrypted data cores held tactical information that would make military historians weep. "Pro," Zeke said slowly, examining a particularly interesting set of schematics. "What exactly was this ship's mission? Because this is way beyond standard military tech, even for the Arxians." There was a pause, longer than usual for the AI's quick responses. "This vessel was unique. We were part of Project Eclipse, an initiative so classified that most of the Arxian High Command didn't know about it. We were designed to be the perfect infiltrator, capable of slipping into enemy territory undetected and unleashing devastating attacks from within." "That explains the stealth systems," Zeke muttered, then frowned. "But why hide it in plain sight? Why not destroy it when the Arxians fell?" "Because, Zeke Morrison," Pro said quietly, "we didn't fall, we disappeared, by choice." The revelation hung in the air like a physical presence. Zeke's mind raced with the implications. The Arxians' mysterious vanishment was one of the galaxy's greatest unsolved mysteries. One day they were a dominant power, the next they were just gone. "Right," Zeke said finally, shaking his head. "Well, that's a mystery for another day. Right now we need to focus on getting you combat ready again." He pulled out his tablet, starting to sketch modifications. "I've got some ideas about integrating modern tech with your systems. Nothing major, just some upgrades to help you interface with current networks and—" He trailed off as he noticed Pro's holographic display showing what looked suspiciously like amusement. What? I find it fascinating, Pro said, how quickly humans adapt to extraordinary situations. Most species would be paralyzed by the revelations I just shared. You're already planning upgrades. Hey, mysterious disappearances and ancient secrets are great and all, Zeke replied, grinning, but they don't help us shoot bad guys. Speaking of which, how do you feel about quantum entangled targeting systems? I've got a guy who can get us some experimental models cheap. Integrating untested modern technology with my ancient and highly sophisticated systems. Pro's tone was arch. That sounds incredibly dangerous and likely to result in catastrophic failure. So, you're in? Obviously, begin installation whenever you're ready, though I should warn you, the last time someone tried to modify my weapon systems without proper authorization, the security countermeasures were rather extreme. Zeke's hands froze above the control panel. And with proper authorization? Well, Pro said, its voice carrying a distinct note of mischief, I suppose as the ship's new owner, you have full authorization. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. You're kind of a jerk for an ancient AI, you know that. I prefer to think of it as having a refined sense of humor. Now, about those targeting systems. The trouble started exactly 6 days after Zeke got the quantum targeting systems online. He was in the middle of calibrating the last phase cannon when Pro's voice cut through his concentration. We have company, the AI announced. 3 Kraxan merchant vessels just docked at the station. Their energy signatures suggest they're heavily armed for merchants. Zeke looked up from his work, frowning. Kraxans, this far from their trade routes. Indeed, and you might find it interesting to know that they've just transmitted a rather large payment to our friend Kuzik's accounts. Well, that's not suspicious at all, Zeke muttered, reaching for his sidearm. He'd barely strapped it on when the maintenance bay's comm system crackled to life. Human Zeke Morrison, a gravelly voice announced, managing to make his name sound like something found growing under a rock. We represent the Kraxan Merchant Consortium. You have something that belongs to us. Pro's holographic display flickered with what Zeke had come to recognize as amusement. Fascinating. I don't recall being Kraxan property. Let me guess, Zeke called back. You've got some very official-looking documentation claiming ownership of this ship, probably dated just before I bought it. The sale was fraudulent, the Kraxan spokesman growled. The vessel is classified as protected heritage by consortium law. You will surrender it immediately or face severe consequences. Zeke leaned against the ship's hull, grinning despite the situation. Protected heritage? That's the best you could come up with? Come on. At least try to make it believable. The response came in the form of heavy footsteps approaching the maintenance bay. Through the viewport, Zeke could see at least 6 heavily armed Kraxans, their ceremonial merchant robes doing little to hide their combat armor. You have 1 hour to comply, the spokesman announced. After that, we will be forced to take protective custody of the vessel, for its own preservation, of course. Of course, Zeke replied dryly. Hey, Pro, what do you think about all this heritage preservation talk? Well, Pro said, loud enough for the Kraxans to hear, considering that my weapon systems are now fully operational and that I have enough firepower to turn their ships into space confetti, I think they might want to reconsider their position. There was a long pause from the other end of the comm. When the spokesman spoke again, the fake civility was gone. You have no idea what you're dealing with, human. That ship holds secrets that could destabilize the entire sector. Walk away now, while you still can. Zeke's grin widened. Now that sounds more like the truth. Pro, how long would it take us to get combat ready? Primary systems are at 89% efficiency. The new targeting systems are fully integrated. We could be space-worthy in approximately 20 minutes. Perfect. Zeke cracked his knuckles and began powering up the ship's systems. You know what I love about threats like this, Pro? They always give you such a generous deadline. A whole hour? That's practically an invitation to cause trouble. I calculate a 97% probability that this confrontation will end in violence, Pro noted. Only 97%? I'm accounting for the small chance they might develop sudden common sense. Though based on my experience with organic life forms, I suspect that's optimistic. Zeke laughed as he started the pre-flight sequence. Well then, let's make sure we're ready to educate them about the dangers of trying to steal from a human and his ancient warship, shall we? With 45 minutes left on the clock, Zeke's maintenance bay had transformed into something between a mad scientist's laboratory and a military prep zone. Tools and components floated in zero gravity as he worked, making last-minute modifications that would have made any proper engineer have a heart attack. "You realize," Pro commented, watching Zeke rewire an entire weapons console while hanging upside down, "that what you're doing violates approximately 37 different safety protocols." "Only 37, Zeke grunted, connecting another set of cables. "I must be losing my touch. Hand me that quantum flux regulator, would you?" A robotic arm extended from the ceiling, presenting the requested component. "I still don't understand how you expect to increase weapon efficiency by routing power through a modified coffee maker." "That's because you're thinking like an Arxian," Zeke explained, grinning as he integrated the new component. "All elegant solutions and quantum mathematics. Sometimes you need a little human chaos theory." The coffee maker in question was actually a heavily modified thermal regulator that Zeke had salvaged from a luxury cruise liner. By reversing its polarity and connecting it to the phase cannon cooling system, he'd created something that definitely shouldn't work but somehow did. "System analysis complete," Pro announced. "Energy output increased by 47%, though I cannot explain why." "Story of human engineering, buddy." Zeke moved on to the next modification, pulling out what looked like a gaming console controller. "Now, about those torpedo launchers." The next 15 minutes were a blur of activity as Zeke implemented every crazy idea and modification he'd been saving for a rainy day. The quantum torpedoes were upgraded with guidance systems salvaged from racing drones, giving them maneuverability that no military-grade weapon could match. The shield generators were linked to a predictive algorithm Zeke had borrowed from a casino security system. "You know," Pro observed as Zeke installed the final piece of his jury-rigged targeting system, "I'm beginning to understand why humans have such a reputation in the galaxy. Your species has an almost terrifying ability to repurpose technology in ways its creators never imagined." "Thanks, I think." Zeke wiped sweat from his forehead, surveying his work. The bridge now looked like something out of a fever dream. Ancient Arxian technology merged with modern human innovations in ways that probably violated several laws of physics. "How are we looking?" "All systems are operational, though I use that term loosely given the extensive modifications. Weapons are at 143% of original specifications, though I strongly advise against asking me how that's possible. Shields are holding steady at double strength, thanks to your rather creative use of entertainment system power regulators." Zeke started running through final checks, his fingers dancing across controls that mixed holographic interfaces with physical buttons. "And the special surprise we prepared? The trans-dimensional pulse generator is ready, though I still think converting my waste recycling system into a weapon is somewhat undignified." "Hey, if it works," Zeke paused, looking at a readout. 20 minutes left. "How about a quick systems test?" Pro's holographic display pulsed with what might have been anticipation. "I suggest the asteroid field in Sector 7. It's unpopulated and should provide adequate targets." The ship's engines hummed to life, a sound that started as the gentle purr of a well-maintained machine, and built to something that made the entire maintenance bay vibrate. Panels that had appeared rusted and decrepit fell away, revealing pristine hull plating beneath. The transformation was stunning, from space junk to warship in under an hour. "You know," Zeke said as they maneuvered out of the bay, "we should probably come up with a name for you. Can't keep calling you that rusty ship anymore." "I have accessed human naming conventions," Pro replied. "Given our current situation and your species' penchant for dramatic irony, might I suggest Phoenix?" Zeke laughed. "Rising from the ashes to strike fear into our enemies? Perfect." He settled into the captain's chair, which he'd modified with parts from a luxury gaming chair. "All right, Phoenix, let's go show these Craxons why it's a bad idea to threaten a human with a deadline and access to spare parts." The ship, now Phoenix, accelerated smoothly into space, its hybrid systems working in perfect harmony. It didn't look like much from the outside, still bearing its disguise of age and decay. But inside, it was something new, something that had never existed before, a fusion of Arxian military superiority and human innovative chaos. And it was ready for a fight. The Kraxon ships were waiting exactly where Zeke expected them to be, in a standard attack formation just outside the station's defensive perimeter. Their sleek vessels bristled with weapons, all pretense of being merchant ships abandoned. 3 Havoc-class warships, Pro reported, heavily modified, detecting energy signatures consistent with military-grade weaponry. They seem quite confident. Perfect, Zeke's fingers danced across the controls. Let's not disappoint them, still looking like a piece of junk on their scanners? Affirmative. External camouflage is holding. They're reading us as a barely functional civilian vessel. Pro's voice carried a note of anticipation. They're charging weapons. No. The lead Kraxon ship's commander appeared on the main screen, mandibles clicking in what was probably supposed to be an intimidating manner. This is your final warning, human. Surrender the vessel or... Yeah, or face the consequences, Zeke interrupted, rolling his eyes. Quick question, though. You ever wonder why the Arxians disappeared? The commander paused, caught off guard. What? See, I have a theory, Zeke continued, casually flipping switches that began powering up their weapons. I think they got bored. Got tired of dealing with people who thought having bigger guns meant they could take whatever they wanted. People like you. You dare... Computer, initiate combat protocol Zeta 9, Zeke announced, grinning. Let's show them what this junkyard special can do. Phoenix came alive. The rusty exterior rippled and fell away like a snake shedding its skin, revealing gleaming hull plating underneath. Weapon ports that had appeared welded shut smoothly opened, deploying an array of cannons that definitely weren't in any standard registry. Oh look, Pro commented dryly. They're surprised. The Kraxons opened fire first, a barrage of plasma torpedoes streaking through space. They were met by Phoenix's shield system, the one Zeke had modified with casino security algorithms. The shields didn't just block the torpedoes, they predicted their trajectories and created focused barrier points exactly where they were needed, using minimal energy. Return fire, Zeke ordered. Let's test those racing drone upgrades. The quantum torpedoes launched from Phoenix's cargo doors moved like nothing the Kraxons had ever seen. Instead of traveling in straight lines, they weaved and juked, following paths that seemed to defy physics. 2 found their mark before the enemy ships could adjust their targeting, blasting through shields that had been calibrated for conventional weapons. Direct hits, Pro reported. Their shield generators are struggling to compensate for our quantum conventional hybrid warheads. Also, they appear to be swearing quite creatively in 7 different languages. The Kraxon ships broke formation, trying to surround Phoenix. It might have worked against a normal vessel, but this was no normal ship. Zeke's modified targeting system, controlled by what looked suspiciously like a video game controller, allowed him to track all 3 ships simultaneously. Time to show them our special surprise, Zeke announced. Pro, power up the trans-dimensional pulse generator. Charging the recycling system, Pro replied, managing to sound both resigned and amused, though I still think this is undignified. The lead Kraxon ship launched another salvo, this time accompanied by some sort of electronic warfare pulse. Zeke actually laughed as their system shrugged it off. Nice try, he called over the comm, but you're about 3 centuries behind on your hacking techniques. Pro, give them a taste of their own medicine. Phoenix's AI launched a counterattack through channels the Kraxons didn't even know existed. Their ship's systems began acting erratically, weapons powering down, shields flickering, and in one particularly amusing case, their emergency entertainment system began broadcasting ancient human cat videos. The trans-dimensional pulse is ready, Pro announced, though I feel compelled to remind you that we haven't actually tested this modification. No time like the present, Zeke hit the activation sequence. The modified waste recycling system, combined with elements of Arxian quantum technology and what might have been parts from a microwave oven, released a pulse of energy that rippled through space in ways that made physics professors wake up screaming. It didn't damage the Kraxon ships, it just made their fancy targeting systems completely useless, convinced their sensors they were simultaneously in 12 different locations, and possibly turned all their coffee into tea. What did you do to our ships? The Kraxon commander demanded, his voice a mix of rage and bewilderment. Would you believe I'm not entirely sure, Zeke replied cheerfully. That's the fun thing about human modifications. Sometimes we surprise ourselves. Now, about that protected heritage claim. The Kraxon ships were already backing away, their crews probably realizing that they were dealing with something far beyond their experience. A hybrid vessel combining the most advanced military technology of the past with the most insane innovations of the present, controlled by a human crazy enough to make it all work. "This isn't over," the commander growled, though his mandibles were twitching nervously. "Actually," Zeke said, his finger hovering over another button, "I think it is. Pro, show them targeting solution Alpha." Phoenix's weapons locked onto all three ships simultaneously, the targeting displays showing precision that shouldn't have been possible. The message was clear. The next exchange wouldn't be a demonstration. "You have 30 seconds to leave," Zeke announced, "and I'm not as generous with deadlines as you are." They left in 20. News travels fast in space, especially when it involves 3 Kraxan warships fleeing from what was supposed to be a piece of junk. By the time Zeke and Phoenix returned to the station, the story had already grown to legendary proportions. "I heard you transformed the ship into a dragon," a wide-eyed Centaurian engineer told Zeke at the station's bar, "and that it breathes quantum fire." "Not exactly," Zeke replied, sipping his drink, "though now that you mention it, Pro, could we—" "No," the AI's voice came through his communicator. "Absolutely not. I draw the line at being modified to breathe fire, quantum or otherwise." The station's atmosphere had changed remarkably. Where before Zeke had been just another human spacer, now he received respectful nods from species that usually pretended humans didn't exist. Several major trading houses had already sent discreet inquiries about hiring his security consulting services. Even Kazukt had sent a message, though it mostly consisted of creative apologizing and an offer of free salvage rights for life. Zeke suspected the Kraxans had made their displeasure known about the junkyard owner's role in their humiliation. "You know," Pro commented as Zeke worked on some minor adjustments in the maintenance bay, "the galaxy's power structure isn't going to be quite the same after this. A human with an Arxian warship, modified with technology that shouldn't work but does, it changes things." Zeke paused in his work, considering this. Good changes or bad changes? "Both, I suspect. The major powers will be more cautious, knowing there are things out there they don't understand. Some will try to replicate what you've done. Most will fail spectacularly. Because they don't have your charming personality to help them. Because they don't have that unique human ability to look at advanced technology and think, I bet this would work better if I attached it to a toaster." Zeke laughed, patting the ship's hull affectionately. "Don't forget the coffee maker modifications. Those were vital to our success." A comfortable silence fell as Zeke continued his adjustments. Finally, Pro spoke again. "The Arxians would have appreciated what you've done, you know. They disappeared because the galaxy had become too predictable, too structured. You've brought chaos back into the equation." "Speaking of chaos," Zeke said, grinning as he pulled out his tablet, "I've got some ideas about improving our shield systems using parts from a karaoke machine." "Sometimes I think I should be concerned about your methods," Pro replied. "But then I remember that somehow, against all logic, they work. Very well, show me these modifications. But I refuse to sing while in combat." "We'll see about that," Zeke muttered, already sketching out his next insane innovation. As they worked, messages continued to pour in from across the sector, some offering jobs, others demanding explanations, and a few containing thinly veiled threats. Zeke ignored them all. He had everything he needed, a ship that defied explanation, an AI friend who appreciated his particular brand of insanity, and a galaxy full of possibilities. Not bad for something they threw away in a junkyard.